UGA Football News presents today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. On today's Sports Report, we'll talk about University of Georgia football and more. Today's Sports Report is brought to you by Happy Sewing and Quilting, offering products that will help you show your Bulldog pride. Hall Shots Photography, going above and beyond to provide pristine and professional photography for all of life's greatest moments, plus many other fine sponsors. And now, here's your host of today's Sports Report, Chris Hall.
Third and long, three receivers to the near side. And Daniels takes the snap, drops back on the 48, heaves the ball long towards the end zone. Kearis Jackson, this time he caught it! Yeah! Touchdown, Georgia! How did he get so open behind the defense? Daniels saw him. Kearis kind of backpedaled into the end zone and cradled the ball about waist high, fell to the turf in front of the goalpost. He got the 6 that time.
Yes, sir, he did. And what a game this past Saturday night up in Athens, Georgia. We say up because, we're in South Georgia, but in Athens, Georgia. Man, what a game. I loved it, watched every minute of it, enjoyed it so greatly as the University of Georgia winning over the Mississippi State Bulldogs, 31-24, in an exciting and closer than expected game, of course. Georgia coming into the game a 35-point favorite. Well, it didn't exactly work out that way, but it was a good game, and you got to win, and boy, did Mississippi State ever play a good game, and some surprising things coming from the Bulldogs of the University of Georgia. By the way, Scott Howard's call of J.T. Daniels' 40-yard touchdown pass to Kearis Jackson in the fourth quarter of last Saturday's Georgia Bulldog game with Mississippi State, presented courtesy of Learfield IMG Game Day Audio and the University of Georgia Bulldog Radio Network. So, Matthew, it looks like we got us a quarterback. What do you think, huh?
Yeah, I am totally excited about JT Daniels. What a show he put on. And taking nothing away from Mississippi State, they played a great ball game. Will Rogers, gunslinging it out there. 41 of 52, 336 yards himself with one touchdown. He played a great game. But, man, JT Daniels, it was just so exhilarating and so refreshing to see a Georgia quarterback actually throw the ball. And the wide receivers of the Georgia football program and their core of receivers, make the plays that they did. Over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. What a game from JT Daniels.
Yeah, it was absolutely a great game. And no one expected this. I was watching the pregame comments from the TV commentators and listening on radio as well. And the consensus was, Georgia's got to run the ball to win this game. You don't know what you're going to get out of J.T. Daniels. Well, Georgia couldn't run the ball, as we'll talk about in just a moment. But, boy, did they ever throw it around. And I think the receivers, Jermaine Burton, George Pickens, Kearis Jackson, Demetrius Robertson, and the group, they probably got together and had a happy dance after this game because they actually had the ball thrown to them. And, boy, I just can't say too much about J.T. Daniels and how he looked in this ball game. Kyle Trask, he's there in Florida, Mac Jones in Alabama. But I think, based on what we saw last Saturday night, J.T. Daniels is right there with those two dudes. He played a fantastic game, didn't he?
Yeah, he was absolutely unbelievable. You got to remember, put this in perspective, J.T. Daniels has not played football took a snap in a football game in a very long time. And for him to show up and be as poised as he was, 28 of 38, 401 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. He was in complete control the whole night. He looked very good in the pocket. I know he went down a couple times with sacks, and that's to be expected, with the inexperience of his, not playing football for a while. But what? Really, and this is a fact I saw, on social media. I mean, JT Daniels is the first Georgia quarterback to throw for over 400 yards since Aaron Murray in 2013.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic game. And if you think we're excited about the game JT Daniels had, Kirby Smart, he was pretty excited as well. And, of course, Kirby's excitement. Now, on the sidelines, the dude can jump like 5 feet in the air when he's excited or trying to get on the refs. But, at a news conference, he's a little more subdued. This is some of what Kirby Smart had to say in the post-game interview after that game on Saturday night.
First off, I'd like to hats off to Mississippi State and Coach Leach and his team to come over here and have some guys down and go out and play the way they did. I thought played with a lot of heart and a lot of fight. What they were able to do defensively in terms of stopping our run game. Those guys, man, we knew the guys they had up front play really hard and physical. They do a tremendous job of making you one-dimensional, and give them a lot of credit for that. And then offensively, they had a quarterback that I thought played outstanding. He's gotten better and better and better, and you watch all the games, and you see him progress, and you see Costello in there, and then you see this young kid. And talking to Coach Leach even after the game, I thought that he played so much better than they had been playing, and gave us some fits. So hats off to them. Second half defensively, we were finally able to rise up and get some stops, and was really pleased with how the crowd impacted that. And then obviously offensively, we were so much more explosive tonight. And those are the things that we've got wideouts that can make plays. And when all those guys are healthy and really in there in tune, we got good pass protection. We couldn't run the ball very well, but we got good pass protection. We can be explosive. I've seen those kind of plays in practice and even other times when we've been able to be explosive. And I thought that was the difference in the game, was obviously our explosive plays versus theirs not explosive.
Yeah, Coach Smart talked about Mississippi State keying on the running game of Georgia. Georgia had a tough night rushing. The rushing game was just not there, and that was really because of the scheme that Mississippi State was playing. Man, they brought everybody to the house on the line of scrimmage, and it was tough for the offensive line to knock some holes in the Mississippi State defensive line. To just show how tough it was a night for the Georgia running game, Zamir White had 11 carries for 21 yards. James Cook, 4 carries, 7 yards. Kenny McIntosh, 3 carries for 5 yards. Now, you might say, well, Georgia's running game on Saturday night was just terrible and it was awful. And, yeah, it wasn't what you expected. It wasn't what anybody expected. But the running backs were doing their job. The offensive line just couldn't hold back everything that Mississippi State was throwing at Georgia. It was obvious Mississippi State was keying on the running game of Georgia. They felt like if they could stop Georgia from running, then they would have a chance to win the game. But one thing you can say about our running backs, kudos to them. They were great in blocking. They did a great job in blitz pickup. And so while the guys may not have picked up a lot of yards, you cannot say they were not productive, Matthew. We have such character quality guys on this Georgia football team. And our running back, Zamir White, Zeus, he's a stud not only in the football field, but in his own personal life. What a great guy. They really played well in a lot of ways, and kudos to our running backs. We're not going to down them here by any means.
No, absolutely not. I mean, and running backs, I mean, the average person is going to look for, the yards that running back generated in a football game and base their opinion on his performance, based off how many yards he has. But oftentimes the stats that don't show up on, that they do things they do that don't end up on a stat sheet, such as blocking, and you cannot take away from that in this game. I mean, the running backs, they did an exceptional job regardless of the yards that were generated. The blocking game was there. I mean, they were you got to give Mississippi State some credit. I mean, these guys were pushing that line. And I think you're right in the assessment of, I felt as if the Mississippi State wanted to load the middle and really stop the run. And I felt that they believed if they do that, they could win the game because JT Daniels had been, out, hadn't played. They were going to force him to throw the ball. Well, he did. and you see what happened.
And kudos to Mississippi State. You know, they actually had below the minimum required players that were available to play because of COVID-19 things. But now the SEC says, well, if you're close, your team can vote whether or not to play, even though you don't have maybe the minimum required number of players. Mississippi State got together and said, hey, Coach, we want to play. And boy, did they ever play. They played a lot of freshmen. I tell you, my assessment of Mississippi State really climbed up several notches. And Coach Mike Leach and his staff, it was a good game. Nobody expected Mississippi State to hang in with Georgia the way they did. But go Mississippi State Bulldogs. I tell you, it was a great game, and they had a great game plan, and they played with excitement and with enthusiasm, and they came awful close to pulling a big upset over the Georgia Bulldogs. So now the wide receivers, as much as the running backs had a tough time Saturday night, my word, here comes our wide receivers. Jermaine Burton, 8 catches, 197 yards. Wow. And this is a freshman, a true freshman, and just fantastic. George Pickens had 8 catches, 87 yards. George Pickens all of a sudden says, hey, I'm on this team again. Karis Jackson, 4 catches, 55 yards. Demetrius Robertson, I love him. He doesn't get a lot of action his way, but he had 3 catches for 45 yards. Man, it was good to see a quarterback from the University of Georgia utilizing these great wide receivers that we have. It was good to see, wasn't it, Matthew?
Yeah, it was absolutely unbelievable. I mean, it takes you back to the memories of when you had gunslingers out there for Georgia that used the wide receivers in that kind of fashion. I mean, you have Aaron, it takes you back. Actually made me think of Aaron Murray a lot, who, is up there, and if he's not still the all-time SEC passing leader in yards, I mean, he's still awful close. I know at one time he was. And it also makes you think of, Stafford. I mean, Stafford was a gunslinger for Georgia. Takes you back to these kind of guys when you see a performance from JT Daniels like that. And it really, gives you it gives you a big refreshment to see these wide receivers come into play like that. And Jermaine Burton, being a true freshman, 8 catches, 197 yards. Pickens in there. I mean, you put these guys on the side, and 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. I mean, that's and you got JT Daniels out there.
Pretty tough.
Defenses are going to have a problem.
Yeah, pretty tough. And now Georgia's defense had a rough first half because Mississippi State just methodically would move down the field. The defense played much better in the second half, but Georgia's defense had their hands full with this air raid offense. And kudos to another quarterback, Will Rogers from Mississippi State. Now, he's a true freshman. Last year, he was playing high school football in Brandon, Mississippi. And, man, did he play good on Saturday night. The quarterback play on Saturday night in this game was just fantastic. Will Rogers, a true freshman, 41 of 52 for 336 yards and 1 touchdown. And this dude is a freshman. I mean, freshmen showed up all over the place in this game. Man, I was really impressed with Will Rogers, wasn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to tell you something. Will Rogers showed up to the University of Georgia this past Saturday night with ice running through his veins. I mean, he showed up, no fear. And I'm going to tell you right now, Georgia, without the play of the wide receivers, I mean, Georgia loses this ball game. Will Rogers, being a true freshman, he showed up to win this game, and he almost pulled it off in our house. So you have to give him credit. I mean, that, I believe, at the beginning of the year, this team had a different quarterback running this air raid offense in KJ Costello. Well, that switch was made to Will Rogers, and I believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that this team is much better. With the air raid offense and the way it runs with this true freshman out there, I mean, this kid has no fear.
He was great, fantastic. Of course, the star of the game for the University of Georgia fans, JT Daniels. And we caught up with JT Daniels in his post-game interview, and this is just some of the things that he had to say. He was asked, hey, JT, did you expect to throw for 400 yards in your first start at the University of Georgia?
We weren't even paying attention to the numbers or, any of that. It was just executing what Coach Munkin called, and I think he dialed up a phenomenal game plan. Receivers did a great job of winning. And, the whole line starting up with Trey Hill, calling out the protections, helping me out and, keeping the whole thing going. It was just a great job from all of us. So in terms of the run game, I think first you got to give a lot of credit to Mississippi State and that front six and really the D coordinator too as well. They ran a bunch of stunts. They were doing a great job of, playing right into it. And those guys are physical, tough dudes. It's a really good defense. On film, we've been such a great run team. And I think, we had to prove ourselves in the passing game a little bit. So they came out and they played a little more cover zero, no safeties. They put a little more man. Really, I think it was their emphasis to try and stop Zeus and Cook from, taking it up on him. And then, no, I did not think we would have to come out and be throwing the ball that much. But, that's football. You play the game, see their game plan, see what they're trying to stop, and then you counter it. But that's kind of the thing. If you have George Pickens and Jermaine Burton, if you're not going to throw it up to them, don't recruit them. George will make me look good. Jermaine makes me look good. Kieris makes me look really good when I underthrow a deep ball down the middle. Yeah. He makes a great play.
I think he's exactly right. If you're going to recruit these guys who are studs on the outside, wide receivers, if you want to recruit more of them, you better use the ones you have because recruits are looking at what kind of offense you have. And so, we're feeling really good about JT Daniels. Now, one thing, Matthew, I guess we got to kind of bring up a little bit. Kirby Smart has taken a lot of heat this week with this question. Why did it take so long for JT Daniels to play in a game for the University of Georgia? And of course, he's tried to give the answer, well, we just didn't think he was there where he needed to be. He actually didn't have a great fall camp. And Coach Smart, some folks have got on his last nerve by continually asking this question. You just got to trust your coach, I guess, and you just got to trust that Kirby Smart. He wants to win. Who doesn't want to win? He wants to win. So I don't know why it took so long for JT Daniels to be out there, but I'm glad he was, aren't you, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was essential that Georgia get Daniels out there. If you're going to have the guy come in, he was a 5-star, and he looked good where he was before he came to Georgia.
USC,
the thing is, if you got Daniels and, I know he had the injury still plaguing him prior to, the beginning of the season, but once he was cleared, and you were seeing things really fall apart, I kind of question Smart myself on that, on why he didn't start JT Daniels, sooner. But at the same time, I also trust Kirby Smart and that's just the way things go. I think that, again, and I still believe this in my heart, I believe that Stetson Bennett had earned, the right to at least give it a shot, and that DeJuan Mathis as well. And things just, kind of fell apart for him a little bit. And if you're going to have Daniels out there, you got to utilize him and at least see what the guy can do. And in the first game, he did not disappoint.
Oh, he did not. At all. Of course, Georgia will be back on the field this coming Saturday. They'll be taking on South Carolina. We'll be talking about that game. Looking forward to the game in Columbia, South Carolina after we take a break. But as we go to break, we have another Bulldog trivia question for you. Now, we don't know where Georgia will be playing in a bowl game this year. It's certain they'll be playing somewhere in a bowl game with like 20,000 people maybe in the stands. Of course, a lot of these bowl games are going to be TV specials, really for TV consumption only. But we know Georgia's going to play in a bowl game somewhere. I've seen speculation, either the Peach Bowl, maybe the Cotton Bowl even. But Georgia's played in many different bowl games over the years. What is the first bowl game they ever played in? And what year was it? Well, why don't you think about that? And when we come back, after our break, we'll have the answer. Good to have you with us today on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. Stay tuned.
Don't go away. We'll be back in just a moment with more of today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.
Hall Shots Photography, featuring the work of award-winning photographer and Georgia football lover Matthew Hall, is a proud sponsor of today's Sports Report. While Matthew is at home on the sidelines of Sanford Stadium taking beautiful action shots of another Bulldog victory, he also specializes in other types of photography, including landscapes, portraits, weddings, and promotional photos to help promote your business or your special cause. Matthew is also a trained videographer, and he loves capturing those always exciting high-in-the-sky drone shots. Matthew has been the camp photographer for various football camps, including those featuring Roquan Smith, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and other Bulldog greats. You can check out Matthew's work on Facebook at Hall Shots Photo and on Instagram at Hall Shots Photography. You can contact Matthew at hallshotsphotography@gmail.com. That's hallshotsphotography@gmail.com. Matthew has a camera, and he'll travel to get that right shot for you. Contact him today.
Happy Sewing and Quilting is a proud sponsor of today's Sports Report. Happy Sewing and Quilting offers custom and professionally made items that will help you show your Bulldog pride. How about a custom and professionally made 100% cotton face mask featuring beautiful Bulldog fabric? Of course, everyone in your family will need more than one. And just like the Bulldogs on game day, Happy Sewing and Quilting can and will deliver. From custom-made face masks to baby bibs to tote bags and more, Happy Sewing and Quilting will help you get ready for game day or any day you want to let the world know you love the Georgia Bulldogs. If you're interested in items featuring the colors and logos of other teams, or if you're interested in non-sports related items that meet your taste and show off your style, Happy Sewing and Quilting will be more than happy to help you. For more information, you can contact Happy Sewing and Quilting at ahall1921@hotmail.com. That's AHALL1921@hotmail.com. Contact them today.
Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.
Yes, welcome back. It's always good to have a program when your Bulldogs play so well as they did last Saturday night against Mississippi State. As we went to break, we had a trivia question. Georgia's played in many different bowl games over the years. What was the first bowl game they played in, and in what year was it? Kind of surprising to me that it was this year. The answer is the Orange Bowl in 1942. I would have thought maybe the Bulldogs had played in bowl games before then. Anyway, the Dogs played TCU in the 1942 Orange Bowl, and they beat the Horned Frogs 40-26. And no, I was not at that game and didn't see it on television. All right, welcome back to today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. Well, let's take a look now, turn and take a look at the upcoming game for the University of Georgia. This coming Saturday, the 13th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs, 5-2 on the year, will face South Carolina in Columbia at 7:30 p.m. It'll be again on the SEC Network as last week's game was. The Bulldogs will be seeking to avenge last year's upset loss, which was very upsetting to South Carolina in Athens. The Gamecocks beat Georgia last year 20-17 in a very disappointing game. By the way, Rod Blankenship missed a field goal in that game. Really disappointed him, but he got one Sunday night for the Indianapolis coach to have the winning points for Indianapolis. Anyway, we digress from that. Georgia leads the overall series, 51 wins, 19 losses, 2 ties. South Carolina, of course, fired Will Muschamp as their coach a couple of weeks ago. And now South Carolina is being coached temporarily, an interim basis, by former Georgia quarterback and offensive coordinator Mike Bobo. South Carolina 2-6 on the year. Man, they're just having a terrible year. The Gamecocks have lost 4 games in a row. They lost last week to Missouri by a score of 17-10. So, Matthew, here we go now. The University of Georgia taking on South Carolina. It's on paper, again, Georgia's a big favorite, but, you just never know. It's the SEC. What do you think about this game coming up?
Yeah, it's the SEC, but I'm going to tell you right now, South Carolina has really struggled. And, of course, getting rid of Bobo, players have left the program. Right after that, I mean, you've had some players leave. I mean, the Gamecocks team is just it's fragmented. And so I believe that Georgia rolls in, especially with JT Daniels looking the way he looked. I don't believe it's there. I don't believe the defense for South Carolina can hold up against the passing game of JT Daniels.
Well, of course, South Carolina loves to beat Georgia. It just really makes them so happy. So they'll be fired up, and it'll be a good game in Columbia, South Carolina, I'm sure. Well, let's take a look at some of the other SEC games coming up this weekend. Arkansas taking on Missouri. Arkansas will be at Missouri. Arkansas is 3-4. Sam Pittman, of course, the coach for the Razorbacks. They lost last week. Arkansas did to LSU 27-24 in a controversial ending to that game. Missouri is 3-3. They beat South Carolina again 17-10 last week. This will be a noontime game on the SEC network. Arkansas, Missouri. It's going to be this will be a good game. I got to go with Arkansas, though. What about you?
Yeah, I'm actually going to lean against Arkansas a little bit on this game. I mean, Missouri. I mean, it's at Missouri. They controlled the chains. The last game they looked pretty good actually. So I think I'm going to pick an upset here, and I'm going to say that Arkansas is not going to be able to stop Missouri on third down a lot, and I believe that leads to a Missouri victory, especially at home. Okay,
Kentucky at Florida. Kentucky's 3-5 on the year. They lost last week to Alabama, 63-3. This will be in Florida, of course. Florida is 6-1. Florida beat Vanderbilt last week, 38-17. This will be a noontime game on ESPN. Of course, I got to go with Florida against Kentucky. What about you?
Yeah, no doubt. Florida rolls here. I mean, and the Kentucky game, against Alabama. I mean, they, just could not move the ball. Less than 200 yards offense. Alabama steamrolling with Mac Jones. I'm definitely was impressed with him. Still am. Each game that he plays seems like he gets better each game. But I believe Florida with Trask here definitely holds, especially at home against Kentucky.
All right, the Iron Bowl's coming up in Alabama. It'll be Auburn at Alabama. Last year, boy, that was an exciting game. Last year when Auburn came up and beat Alabama. And this is always a great game. Auburn's 5-2. They beat Tennessee last week, 30-17. Auburn's playing pretty good football right now. Alabama beat Kentucky 63-3 last week. This will be the 3:30 spotlight game on CBS. Auburn at Alabama. You got to go with Alabama, but in this game, you just never know. So I've got to go with Alabama. Should be a good game, though.
Yeah, anything can happen on any given Saturday in college football, and any team can be beat. I don't think there's any question of that. But Alabama at home here again. Mac Jones still steamrolling. Don't get me wrong. I know Gus Malzahn and Knicks, they look better, for Auburn offensively, and the defense is held against the passing game pretty well against teams. But I still believe with Alabama at home here, there's no way Auburn wins.
Mississippi State at Ole Miss. This is a big rivalry game, of course. Big in the state of Mississippi. Mississippi State 2-5, losing to Georgia last week, as we've talked about. Ole Miss is 3-4. Their game last week against Texas A&M was postponed. So Mississippi State at Ole Miss, this will be a good game. This will be a slugfest. You got that Ole Miss offense against Mississippi State and its defense. Man, this is going to be a fun game to watch. Oh, man, based on how Mississippi State played last week, of course, they're playing in Oxford against Ole Miss. I'm going to go with Mississippi State in this. I was so impressed with those guys last week.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a good game. There's no question. Ole Miss, I just don't see, especially with the air raid offense I saw last week, and this freshman's on the ball like he did, Will Rogers. I'm going to have to go with Mississippi State in here. I mean, I know anything can happen, and I know Ole Miss has looked good at times, but I'm going to go with Mike Leach in that air raid offense.
All right, LSU at Texas A&M. Another interesting game, another rivalry game. This is really a big rivalry between these two schools. LSU 3-3 beat Arkansas last week, 27-24. Texas A&M 5-1. They did not have a game last week. Their game with Ole Miss postponed. So you got LSU going to Texas A&M. My head says Texas A&M. My heart says LSU. I don't know. I'm going to go with my head on this one. I think A&M will win this game.
Yeah, I think at home, Texas, I mean, I know LSU has looked a little bit better here and there, but I still think I don't believe they still found their identity this season. I mean, they've had a lot of people that they lost, including Joe Burrow, and want to send prayers out to him. I mean, he had a suffering season-ending injury yesterday with his leg, so we send out our thoughts and prayers to Joe Burrow and hope that he recovers well. But I believe that LSU is still trying to find their identity. I mean, Texas A&M here is at home, 5-1. I think Texas A&M holds.
And up in Tennessee at Vanderbilt. Tennessee 2-5, Vanderbilt 0-7. This is the week that Vanderbilt gets a win. I'm going with Vanderbilt. There. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I just don't know. I think this game is actually, I think you could toss up a quarter and, say heads Tennessee, tails Vanderbilt, and you could just toss a quarter and get an answer on this one. I mean, both teams have been pretty bad. So, yeah. But I'm gonna pick that too this week. I don't know why, but I just feel like at home, and Tennessee has not played well. Lost last week to Auburn, 30-17. I mean, I'm gonna go with Vanderbilt.
Yeah, go Vanderbilt. Go Commodores. And actually, you could call this the hot seat game because Jeremy Pruitt is definitely on the hot seat at Tennessee, other than the fact that he got a contract extension at the beginning of the year, and they would have to pay that man a Brinks truck full of money to get him out of Knoxville. And but Derek Mason, I think he's on the hot seat there at Vanderbilt as well. And finally, Georgia at South Carolina. I got to go with my Dogs on this one. What about you?
Yep, no question about it. Dogs on top in this game. I mean, they show up. JT Daniels, the offense and the defense, they handle business. Dogs come out with a win, in Columbia.
Hey, it's been such a great time to have you with us today on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. And go Dogs. We hope next week when we... Hey, and by the way, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And have a safe Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful time with your family. Eat all the turkey you can and take you a big old nap on Thanksgiving afternoon. Today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall is a presentation of Hall Sports Communications. The executive director of today's Sports Report is Trip Block. Our technical advisor is Garrett Carter. The director and board operator for today's program has been Charles Graham. To contact Hall Sports Communications, you can email us at chrishall71 at hotmail.com. That's CHRISHALL 71 at hotmail.com. We thank our sponsors, Hall Shots Photography and Happy Sewing and Quilting, for making our program possible. If you're interested in being a sponsor for our program, contact us today again at chrishall71 at hotmail.com. Thank you for joining us for our program today. We look forward to having you with us next time. Until then, please be safe out there and may God bless you.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. We thank our many fine sponsors for making our program possible. Be sure to join us for our next program as we keep you up to date with University of Georgia football and more. Until then, be safe and go Dogs.